All right. Well, appreciated. And we've got a lot to talk about this week. Crazy amounts of news in the NFL. The NFL feeling much more like the NBA's trade deadline than a week 2 of the NFL season. Let's start with the most recent news. The Giants announced that Eli Manning is going to be benched. Daniel Jones, the new starter at quarterback for the Giants. How do you think this is going to go?
Oh, can't be worse than Eli Manning, I'll tell you that much. If you look at, obviously we know what Eli Manning has been over the last few years, just at best erratic, at worst, maybe the worst starting quarterback in the league. This year to date, against not necessarily the best defenses, he's bottom 7, bottom 8, bottom 10 in he's 61 according to PFF's pass offense metrics. So that's pretty terrible, even by his standards. So, I think it's time. We saw Daniel Jones flash in the preseason. I'm, if nothing else, interested to see what they look like. And this isn't a team that's likely to make any sort of playoff push. So why not see what your number 7 pick has in him?
So what happens with Eli Manning here? Obviously, last year of his contract with New York, wants to play another year at least. But the other factor is he does have, he lives in the New Jersey, New York area. He's got 4 kids under 8 years old. So I'm not sure. And he has a no trade, which is super important in all of this. Do you think he's going to be content cashing a paycheck this year and just being the backup? Or do you think that this team is going to look to shop him to someone who needs a stopgap?
He's 38, but we saw this huge litany of injuries. And, if the Saints don't have 2 pretty capable backups, I think they're the perfect kind of team to look for Eli. Yeah. I guess it ultimately boils down to whether or not he wants to stay or not. But, we'll see what happens. Like if a team with a terrible backup, like, I don't know, the Green Bay Packers lose Rodgers for, 3 or 4 weeks, and, the playoffs are hanging in the balance, maybe that becomes an interesting option. If Mason Rudolph gets hurt for a team in Pittsburgh that has just spent a first rounder on Minka Fitzpatrick and traded their other backup in Josh Dobbs, maybe they become interesting. I don't know. My guess is he wouldn't go too far, for one, and number 2, he would have to go to a team whose offense he's at least somewhat familiar with. But I got to think that, there's nothing really to be gained by him just sitting on the bench aside from mentoring basically his exact clone in Daniel Jones. So, other than that, do you see a reason? I feel like he needs to end up on a team, even if they don't lose their starter to injury. Maybe he's just, around the trade deadline, a contingency plan that you look for as your backup.
Do you see a natural fit right now? Because I sort of have a hard time with that. And it does seem like that he is basically just waiting for somebody to lose their starting quarterback at this point.
Yeah, I don't. I'm with you. Maybe Carolina, if Ron Rivera feels like, they're in trouble with Cam Newton and maybe his job is on the line if they go, 5-11 or something like that. But that being said, today, Ron Rivera came out and said that he really likes his backup quarterback. And I think that they're going to end up sticking with him. So, I'm not sure how that ends up manifesting itself, but I will say I'd be surprised if Eli Manning ends the season on the Giants. Don't you?
It doesn't seem like it would make sense for him to finish the year in New York. I don't see the option at this point. I think the team would be on the hook for $11.5 million if they traded for him.
That's big. Yeah.
So, yeah, exactly. And, Carolina was a team that kind of came to my mind initially too, but they're already 0-2. Plus they have the Saints and the Falcons in that division. I don't know if they're making a trade for Eli, it is just to sort of stay afloat, not even to try and contend for the NFC South. It does feel like, a Patriots or a team like that, a high-end team with major aspirations who loses their quarterback for 4 to 5 weeks would be the ideal landing point for Eli.
And that's a ton of conditions, by the way. Plus, it's got to be a team that's doing well. Because, obviously, right. Jacksonville comes to mind also. But, Gardner Minshew's been okay. And then Tom Coughlin's there, but they're 0-2, like you said. So, right. There's just not a lot of clean fits right this second. But I could see a team potentially turning to him in a dire strait. But again, there are a lot of things that have to happen, and it all has to happen before the trade deadline, which I think I'm not sure if that's the way that it'll go.
Yeah, it also needs to be a team whose offense he fits in. This is not
Yeah.
like, if Kansas City or Baltimore lost their starting quarterbacks, you can't go and trade for Eli Manning.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Kansas City just because Andy Reid's got this huge volume of experience that he could potentially draw on. But yeah, I mean, it's got to be like Rivers and even them, they've got Tyrod Taylor as their backup. So I mean, I'm really thinking about Green Bay as the only one that comes to mind off the top of my head. And, the reality is there aren't a lot of Eli Manning former coaches, around this league because of the fact that he's gotten a lot of them fired. So,
Yeah.
there aren't exactly Ben McAdoo's just hovering around the NFL landscape. So it complicates it even further. But, like say Derek Carr gets hurt, maybe they take a shot on Eli. That like an aggressive front office, a team that's somewhat in contention, and, one that still values Eli Manning for more than what his on-field work has shown.
And I think the other thing is that sort of is working against Eli. You talk about the declining numbers. If you're a team that needs a quarterback for 5 weeks, 6 weeks, wouldn't you rather pay somebody like Sam Bradford $2 million than have to trade for Eli and pay him 11?
Yeah, I mean, the money is definitely a factor. And the other thing that we're not really taking into account here is there may be some value to the Giants in keeping him around beyond just, I mean, obviously there's loyalty and there's the fact that he can help mentor Daniel Jones. But I think that mentorship piece is really critical because, think about the Manning camps and all the good young quarterbacks that come running through there. I just think that there's, and then culturally, Eli Manning is obviously such a giant that, I mean, it may make sense for him to just stay with the money. I mean, unless they really want to fork over, some amount of that prorated and then, get a better pick. But I can't imagine they get anything of value for him, even if they did take on some of the cash.